what's up? Welcome back. All right, we're diving in. Okay, I know in our last episode, we got all excited about tracking food and taking control of your nutrition. And then you insert all the feelings that, oh, this is the answer to my prayers, and all the magical fairy dust falls from the sky, and voila, you gain 5 pounds. Oh, so annoying. So annoying. That level of frustration, I get wholeheartedly. I've been there so many times. Taking marching orders from people that are smarter than me and have been able to go through and lose the weight and look the way that I think I want to look or should look for my age and, my profession, and nothing. Weight gain. Ugh. Anyways, in this episode, I am going to share exactly what you want to focus on and why. Okay, keyword, when you start tracking your food. You might actually be quite surprised on what I'll share. However, I promise by the end of this episode, you will be stacked with the confidence to execute on exactly what I share. With that, okay, let's dive in. Let's talk about this. Why the hell are we tracking food? Why? So I want to challenge you a little bit on this. I want you to think about this activity of tracking food as just collecting data. That's it. Like literally, you're just collecting data. And in my second episode, if you guys listened to that, we talked about that food truly is a data point, that we are just learning about the food that we're consuming and being just honest and transparent to the whole process. And that's what I want you to continue to do and think when you get into tracking. So we're going to cover exactly what you want to look for when you're just starting out. If you've done this before and you're very seasoned in tracking macros or your diet, then maybe this will be a little refresher, or maybe there's just like a little bit of something that you go, damn, I haven't been doing that. Or you know what? I actually started thinking a little bit more over here. So this is just data that we're collecting. So release the whole attachment that you've got to food, whether it's a good experience or a bad experience. Food should not be a negative experience. It should be nourishing. It should be energy inducing. It should be a joy. Like we should look forward to eating food. I freaking love eating. Like I fucking love it. And I'm not the type, there's a funny meme that's been going around on Instagram that's like, I forgot to eat my lunch. Like that never happens. I don't forget to eat anything. And I really wish I did sometimes. But I truly appreciate the food that I get to consume. Now, my palate has changed exponentially over the years. I was definitely notorious for going out and working out as, crazy at the gym as what I thought was crazy, and eating whatever I wanted. And yeah, that might have worked in my early 20s, but we get older, and as we hit our late 20s, early 30s, hormones totally just intercept and our metabolism takes a nosedive. Kids and lack of sleep and stress and blah, 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 right? So I felt like I mastered the game of being able to work out and eat relatively well within a certain window that I thought would, maintain my results at the gym or my efforts at the gym, but I could still go out and party. Like I could go to the clubs, and this is before kids. Okay. However, fun fact, I would always find ways after I had children to, especially while nursing. This is such a tangent. You guys are going to learn this about me. Like I'll go off on tangents, but I promise they're going to be entertaining, but I will come back. But even after my first 2 kids, like I would really figure out how to manage breastfeeding and still be able to go out and have a good time. I never would, I wasn't necessarily going out and getting hammered. Not at all. But I felt like I really had got a handle on things. Like, oh, I'm going to the gym. I'm nursing. I'm going to be like those bitches on Instagram that have lost weight in 6 weeks by nursing. Yeah, no. I mean, if that was you and you were able to drop weight by breastfeeding in 6 weeks and like not doing anything else, just, casually taking your child out for a walk, I am very jealous. That was never me. And I have yet to meet another mom friend or even a client that had that success as well. So don't believe everything you see on Instagram or any social media for that matter, TikTok, Facebook, whatever. Like a lot of that is a fallacy, or you're not really getting the full story. Okay. So going back to tracking your food and allowing it to be a data point, right? So if I used all that food and or lack thereof food choices and maybe just like, oh, I'm going to have a bunch of cheese and salami because keto is, a big thing, or at the time it was Atkins. And if I used all that information as data for myself to tell me how I was feeling, I'd probably be, if I repeated that, I would probably feel like absolute shit because I felt so heavy eating that volume of cheese and heavy meats. Like we did this Atkins. I don't know if you guys, I might date myself here, but we did Atkins. We're getting ready for some friends that were getting married in Mexico, and we didn't have any kids at the time. And my husband at the time was my boyfriend, and he had just bought a home, and we were living together. Oh, I know, totally sacrilegious. My dad didn't totally love that idea, but I did because I got to pay off my credit cards. But we were like, okay, we're going to get into this, pre-wedding thing. We're going to work out and we're going to eat right. So we're going to research all the things. I was still working. I was in commercial real estate at the time, and my husband, boyfriend at the time, he was working for his parents. They own a label business. They still do label manufacturing. So we were both working, like the good life, right? Dual income, no kids. But for me, it was dual income, pay off my credit card. Because I clearly did not have the financial wherewithal to understand that you put it on the credit card, you still got to pay for it at some point in time. So learned that the hard way, got ourselves figured out. Anyways, so we're getting ready for Mexico, and guess what workout program we decided to follow? I'll get to the whole nutrition piece and data point there in a second, because I will bring this back. We did Slim and Six. Do you guys remember Debbie Siebers? Slim and Six? Yeah, fucking loved it. We would be in our living room, which, mind you, we had a big picture window, so we would have our bands out. We were doing Slim and Six, and we actually had pretty good results, believe it or not, physically, like strength-wise, I mean. And we were following, and this was not the food guide or meal guide because they came with general, meal suggestions. We were like, let's do Atkins. It's all the rage right now. So let's go buy all the cheese, all the heavy cream, all the heavy meats because they were high in fat and protein. And I felt like I look back and I was like, oh my gosh, I was so like thick, right? Mind you, like I was wasting all of my efforts on using those bands and, repping them out and squeezing overhead and burning out my shoulders and, doing the lateral walks with the bands. And Debbie's amazing. I actually met her many years later once I got more into the fitness realm of things. Super amazing lady. And I told her kind of the fun story. But Slim and Six was such a great program. Definitely archaic now, but the principles of it, very applicable. So Atkins, again, had I used the information from the food I was ingesting as data to go, okay, how do I feel? And what are the results of this massive consumption and high fats? Now, I'm not going to go into the whole keto realm of things because that's not really what my point was today, getting here and talking with you guys about it. But just kind of a fun fact and going back to how food can be such an informative tool for you and understanding what you're consuming and why, right? So we were just eating Atkins because it was a trend. It was a thing. We had friends that, yes, got results from consuming that amount of high fat and relatively high protein. Was it quality? No, they got results. We weren't 50 to 60 pounds overweight. So had I really focused in on the right proper macronutrients, probably would have had a lot better results. And looking back at pictures, I'm like, wow, I just felt thick. So interesting to look back, I mean, that was probably, let's see, our oldest is 16 and we weren't even married yet. So that's probably 18, almost 19 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago. Like, what a trip, for one. But, all relative to the whole process. So, was it as effective to me at that age in my early 20s? Like, not too much. And have I tried it again? I did, actually. We did to a more keto diet plan, if you will, many, many years ago. Bad idea. Didn't work well. Anyways, but I used that as information. That was intel to me and myself to go, I feel like shit eating like this. Like, my body is not responding well. I was heavier. I was thicker. I felt like just dense, and that was not a feeling that one wants to go for. Generally, we're eating and being mindful of our nutrition because we want to feel lighter. We want to feel stronger. We want to feel more energized. Like, I felt none of that eating that way. And that was my personal experience. So being able to think of food as just a data point, as just intel, as just information and feedback, that's all I want you guys to think about right now. That's why I suggested in the last episode, when you are logging and tracking your information, I think apps are great. MyFitnessPal, Macros First, Lose It, whatever app that you jive with or you have or you've been using, great, stick with it. I do recommend you having a notebook of some sort or getting on your notes section in your phone and speaking to how you truly feel. How's your energy? How's your mood? How's your sleep? How's your workout performance? Are you seeing gains in the gym? Are you getting stronger? Do you find that you're recovering better? How's your lung capacity when you're doing cardio? Are you lifting heavier? Are you able to hold the weights longer? All those things really, really matter, right? So being able to document that in great detail for, a good while, right? Especially as you're learning about this, the more information you can share with yourself, the better. You're going to benefit yourself, bar none, by documenting as much detail as possible. You guys, this is not a life sentence, okay? Documenting and tracking your nutrition does not need to be a life sentence. I think so many people get into the thought of, well, if I track my food, that feels so restrictive. Well, guess what, sister? The reason why it feels so restricted is because you have to own the shit that you're eating and drinking. I mean, am I right? I'm right. I know it. That's deep down the mindset shift that has to happen. Tracking your nutrition doesn't need to be a restrictive mentality. If you go into it that way, that's because it's going to have to be very glaring about the food choices that you currently make and how much maybe alcohol you're consuming, right? So if you find that you're sitting on the couch every night after you put the kids to bed and you're guzzling down half a bottle of wine and having your treat or popcorn or something that's just your thing when the kids go to bed, is that serving you? If it's serving you emotionally, write it down. And then how do you feel in the morning? Is it helping you get to your results? Is it helping you release body fat? Is it helping you sleep? Is it an energy-inducing food? You'll hear me talk a lot about that in coming episodes. I talk about food in that regard, that it's energy-inducing foods, right? Like, you should be eating foods that are nourishing. So they're going to serve the purpose of nourishing your cells, right? Your muscles, like everything about us, right? That we need to function day in and day out starts with food and hydration and sleep and the way we take care of ourselves, right? So we have to get out of our head that documenting and tracking this stuff is restrictive. It's just a total awareness, and you're the only one that's going to be able to, that's seeing this information. Unless you decide to share it with somebody. And when I do work with clients, then they have to be honest to the process. I mean, I can't force them to write down everything they eat, and I only know what they're eating by what they tell me they're eating, right? But it's an accountability tool as well. And I find that when you think more about this as accountability and data collection, then that mindset of restriction and a chore, right, or a life sentence starts to diminish, because now you're making and being more conscious of the decisions that you make. And that's really kind of where this like aha moment comes in, and where a lot of change happens physically. People start seeing results is now they're actually a little bit more mindful of what they're consuming, and they're excited about it because 2-3 days in, they're actually really enjoying the process and going, you know what? I feel really good. I've maybe cut back on some alcohol. I'm not having those, sugary treats at night, or I'm not going and getting a Starbucks, blah, 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 that, maybe is not serving you. Like, you're being a little bit more mindful to your choices because you are going to write it down or log it into your app. And by having to log that you had a pumpkin scone at Starbucks might be, something you don't want to see. And sometimes that's often the shift that I love hearing from clients when they go, I didn't want to log the fact that I was going to eat a scone, so I didn't have it. And you know what? I haven't had these things for 3 or 4 days, and it's amazing how different I feel. Or I've noticed that I put a lot of shit in my coffee each morning. And so now I'm a little bit more aware. And when I start working with clients on nutrition, I really do encourage them to start reading and being aware of their ingredients. And like I said from the get-go, I'm all about education. And that's really what I want to come through to you guys on this podcast is I swear by these things, right? Like I swear by understanding and being more involved and really being that kind of ninja when it comes to understanding your nutrition, like literally being an investigator, like being a scientist behind the whole process. I want you to be armed with the tools and the confidence to go, I totally am the only one that knows exactly how I feel by eating this. I can't go to Taryn, I can't go to anyone on the interwebs or on social media and have them tell me what to eat because they have no idea how my body's going to respond. The only way that you're going to know exactly how your body responds is if you track it. And if you track it holistically, authentically, and raw and real, you're going to really appreciate this experience. I promise, right? So where do you start? What should you really look for when you're starting to track? And this is just really the beginning. And, even as a reminder for those that have maybe seasoned to tracking their food or macros, but I always recommend prioritizing your protein. I find in women primarily, we don't consume enough protein based on the level of efforts that we're putting in the gym. So if you are active, going for walks or hikes, yoga, you head to the gym and you strength train, or you go to your favorite cardio, or you do a Peloton class, like whatever your jam is for your workouts, if you are not meeting your protein needs to match the effort, that energy output, you're wasting your efforts. And then that's where the frustration, like I'm working out 4 or 5 times a week, I'm eating clean, I'm writing it all down, and I'm not seeing results. The very beginning where I was like, oh, all this magic fairy dust, and boom, I gained 5 pounds, right? So your body gets into an inflammatory state if it is not nourished enough, because it draws off that protein to be able to process and synthesize it to build in lean muscle, right? And that is the catalyst to burning body fat, right? We're going for fat loss. We're not looking for weight loss. Like, you want weight loss, go listen to another podcast. I want to teach you how to lose fat, body fat, and refine your body so you feel energized and confident when you're lifting weights. And we're going to get into weightlifting and all the kind of fun things. And down the line, I'm going to have some really fantastic people to talk more about that. So you're not just kind of hearing me yammering at you about stuff. But in regards to beginning to track, I want you to prioritize your protein. So if you're like, okay, what should I eat at each meal as you're preparing? Because, last episode I talked about reverse engineering your day. Start mapping out what you could be eating based on what your schedule is. Prioritize what your protein sources are going to be each time you sit down and have a meal. And I say sit down because hopefully you're not like driving and eating or going through, fast food restaurants and eating that way. And if you are, really be aware of that and why it happens, because probably you didn't manage your time well enough and you weren't adequately prepared. So you sit down for breakfast, what are you going to eat? Prioritize your protein. Okay, I'm going to drill that in your head. Prioritize your protein. I promise you that if you just start focusing on your protein, if anything you take from this podcast is prioritizing your protein and being aware of your protein sources and even starting to think about how much you're consuming, you're going to see a notable difference in your energy, in your performance, in the gym, in how you wake up and feel about your body when you look in the mirror or slide your pants on. If you have a bump in protein, an increase in your protein consumption, you'll immediately feel a difference. I promise. Maybe the scale won't show you 30 seconds in, but over time, over even a week of time of prioritizing your protein, and of course, managing having those adequate fats, and of course, carbohydrates as an energy source, especially if you're working out and you're lifting weights, we need carbohydrates. So don't even come in here and think that you should be eliminating carb. Well, I find that I get the best results when I drop my carbs. Okay, girlfriend, if you're gonna go lift weights, don't be dropping your carbs, okay? It'll be so detrimental down the road. You need carbohydrates. But back to what I want you guys to focus on is to prioritize your protein. So breakfast, you're gonna sit down, what am I gonna eat? If you love eggs, then maybe you're gonna have 1 or 2 eggs, whole eggs, and then maybe you supplement the rest with egg whites if you're trying to manage your fats, because obviously eggs are delicious and super nourishing, and I do think that the egg yolk has so many nutrients in it. So I don't encourage anyone to throw those out. Eat them. Maybe you have a veggie scramble of some sort and then a piece of toast on the side. So boom, you've produced, 25, 30 grams of protein in your first meal. And you might be the type that likes to skip breakfast, and maybe that will work well for you. That's up to you. I'm not going to encourage any one way of eating. So I don't just promote intermittent fasting. I don't promote high carb, low fat, or high carb or low carb, high fat, high protein. Everybody has to understand what their body needs. And the only way you're going to learn that and be your own advocate for that is to start documenting and learning how your body's responding based on what you're consuming. Okay, so breakfast, figure that out, whether you have a smoothie bowl, make sure that you're putting in an adequate amount of protein. Women and men, you should really aim to get about anywhere, if you're active, 25 to 35 grams of protein right out of the gates. And especially if you're lifting weights, you might find that get bumped up. And as you go about and you start learning about what your macronutrient needs are, you might find, hey, in order to meet my macronutrient needs, especially my protein, I need to hit my protein right out of the gates and get in about 45, 50 grams of protein, and that could be a combination of things. And we'll dive into that down the road. But understand that at least having an adequate amount of protein to start your day, you're going to just fly through it. And you're going to find you're more satiated. You're going to find that you're more naturally energetic. You're going to find hopefully that you're not going to need that third, fourth cup of coffee. Okay. Lunch, same thing. What are you going to eat for lunch? Don't leave it up to chance. Don't just, I'll figure it out on the run, or I'll just, do it as I'm, finishing out a meeting and drive on my way home or whatever. Plan it accordingly. And dinner as well. So what I actually end up doing is I figure out what dinner is going to be in a general sense. I don't meal plan. I'm not the type that's going to write out on a board what our meals are going to be for the coming week, because our schedule changes, and sometimes it changes on a whim. So I do know in a general sense what time, I'm going to be home to prepare something, and when maybe 50% of my kids will be home. And then I will just kind of mix and match foods accordingly. So I always have kind of our 5 staples of proteins on hand, and we'll cycle through that. Tuesdays is always Taco Tuesday. So whether it's ground bison or my kids, my daughters actually really love black bean burritos, and they'll have 2 of them, and they're full and they're satiated, and they, we move on with our life. It's great. So I will take whatever dinner's going to be in a general sense, and then I'll reverse engineer from that. Okay, so what's my lunch going to be if I'm having, let's say for instance, ground bison for Taco Tuesday. And I know I'm going to have probably about 4 ounces of ground bison meat. Maybe it's got a medley of seasonings and chopped up onion, salsa, whatever. The seasonings aren't ever really much that makes an impact for me, but am I going to pair it with black beans? Am I going to put some sour cream on it? Yes. I'm going to have it on a sweet potato, or I'm going to have it in a wrap. So I get to make those decisions. And then, okay, let's plug in what I'm going to have for breakfast, because I really love breakfast. And so I map out my day based on what we're consuming and what my schedule is going to be for the day based on kids' activities and work commitments. So once you get into that routine and you begin to start allowing it to be a part of your day and just, basically second nature, it gets easier and easier. And then as you start kind of mixing and matching different meals and foods and proteins and carbs and fats, you'll find that you're creating basically your own custom menu that's working for you. But you've got to just start by doing something. So start prioritizing your protein for each and every meal and measure and log it into your MyFitnessPal, Macros First, Lose It, whatever it is, so you get a general understanding of how much protein you're consuming at each meal and by the end of the day. And here's a total pro tip on how to track and log your food if you're a busy person. Whether you work full time, you're on calls all the time, whatever, and you barely have time to sit down and eat a meal, let alone log it, take a picture of it. You guys see that I post pictures of my food often. So if you're not, follow me on Instagram. It's at Taryn Perry, my first and last name. And I share in my stories all the time what I'm eating. I want people to be inspired by the basic shit that I eat. I am not elaborate. Meals have to be about 20 minutes or less to prepare. Otherwise, it probably won't happen and then it's a big shit show. So you'll see that the simplicity behind how I eat and the food that I make or suggest for my clients to eat with my meal ideas, they very are mindful of that. What was that? They're very much in line with that methodology. Is it's got to be 20 minutes or less. If I'm busy, they're busy too, right? Because chances are people are coming to want to work with me because my personality, my charm with my maturity level, but just, how I go about my day and able to take care of myself is very simplistic. I'm not elaborate in making these fancy dishes. I just never have been. I'm not allowed to bake, as a matter of fact. My husband won't let me bake, only because I ruin everything because I try and cut corners, when you're baking. Anyone else? Hey, I'm going to make this apple crisp and I'm going to make it without sugar. And it's just apples and cinnamon and I'm going to try honey or I'm going to try monk fruit sweetener. And it's disgusting. Admit it, Anyway, so we get a chuckle that he's like, you're not allowed to bake, but you can cook and I'll do the baking. So we have a great deal in that regard. So that's where I want you guys to, if anything, I just want you to get out of this episode is to prioritize your protein and understand why you are tracking this information for yourself. You're collecting data on what you're consuming and the feedback that your body's giving as a result of consuming your food and or beverages that you choose. Because these are choices that you get to make. Nobody's cramming anything down your throat. They're not forcing that pumpkin spice latte or that scone or the donut or the bagel or the whatever else. Nobody's cramming that down your throat. There's a justification process that happens in our head as we are eating something or going to order something. We justify eating it because of fill in your own blank. I worked out today. I had a rough day. It was stressful. I haven't eaten since 3:00 on Wednesday and it's Friday. Whatever. Hopefully you're not going fasting that long. It's kind of ridiculous. But does that help? I really, truly want you guys to go, okay, I'm going to do that. So do that. Start tracking and logging your nutrition and prioritize your protein. Take the information that you're receiving from that day of eating and consuming your water and movement and reflect on how you feel at the end of the day. Document it down, journal every night, make it a thing that is for you. And then when you wake up in the morning, the same thing. How did you sleep? How do you feel? Are you motivated? Are you feeling a little bit burst of energy? Do you look at yourself in the mirror or if you step on the scale, do you feel lighter? Are your pants slipping on a little bit easier? And that will happen as time goes on, the more awareness you bring to it. So do that. And as you find and prepare and learn something, share it on Instagram, inspire other people and tag me. I would love to be able to learn what is working for you and also be able to take that information and share it as well. If you with your permission, of course, but I would love to be able to share that with other people because I think other people are inspired when they see other people going through it, just not like, oh, Taryn the nutritionist is doing this and that, like, oh, I'm not her, right? She's just this and that. Like, I get it. It's my career. This is my business. This is what I've been doing for 14 years. So it comes naturally to me, but it didn't. It didn't for so long. So just remember that. All right. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and listening to me yammer on about nutrition and going off my tangents. You guys are amazing. I look forward to our next episode, and I've got some really fun interviews coming up. So you guys are going to want to make sure that you subscribe to my channel and my podcast here so you guys get firsthand on what's coming next. Until then, you guys have an awesome day.